Hi, everyone. Thanks for choosing to attend my session. I'm hoping you can hear me and see me okay and see my screen. But if that's not the case, please feel free to send a message in the chat. So today I'll be talking about demystifying data science, trying to pull back a little bit of the covers. My goal is to make this interactive, at least as much as I can. So I'll spend the first 15 minutes or so out of the 20 minutes with the content I have, and then try to leave about 5 minutes for questions. So that being said, if during the presentation you have any questions, just throw them into the chat, and I'll try to get to them when we get there. And at the end too, I'll try to leave some time for questions. So a little bit of what I plan to cover today. I'll share a little bit about myself. I'll share my journey and some takeaways. And my hope is that you'll find some tidbits that will be relevant to you. And then we'll dive into the main content about trying to explore data science, which hopefully will help demystify data science. And then, like I said, at the end, we'll have some time for questions. So a little bit about me. I'm Charles Duze. I'm currently an analytics, excuse me, I'm currently in analytics leadership at Meta, formerly known as Facebook. And over the past couple of years, I've had the privilege of working, I had the privilege to work for a couple awesome companies. And I'll share a little bit more about that as I go through my career journey or my life journey. So there's a lot on this slide. I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible. And then on the slide after this, I'll talk about my takeaways from the journey. So I originally grew up in Nigeria, and I came to the US to study medicine. So like any good Nigerian parent would tell you, you can be anything you want as long as you're a doctor or engineer or lawyer. So that was my deal to come to the US to become a medical doctor. Along the way, I sort of fell in love with computers and programming and all that good stuff. And so I decided to switch my master's from just pre-med to actually something based in computer science. My school at the time didn't have a master's in computer science, so I had to switch schools. One important milestone in my life was I got the opportunity to have an internship during my first summer in college, and that was actually very pivotal for a lot of my journey. So I interned with a company called the Money Group, which was an insurance company, and then I interned with them throughout my pretty much every year I was in college, so during every summer and some of the winters as well. Um, I eventually graduated from Syracuse University with a bachelor's in computer science, and I had the privilege of joining Money officially as a full-time employee as a software developer, thanks to the internship that I had. And then decided to start a master's in data science, not for any major smart reason, but just because I figured if I'm going to do a master's, and if I did it within a year, I didn't have to take the GMAT. So that was my major motivation for taking my master's. As it turned out, it was actually a good decision because after I got my master's, I was able to join Microsoft. And so I moved from the Syracuse area to the Seattle area. I spent about 14 years at Microsoft in a variety of different roles, switching through different teams. And some of the significant changes was actually making the switch to move from a software developer to a data engineer. And along the time I changed to become a data engineer, data science became like something that was interesting. This was before data science was as cool as it is now. It was interesting, but at that point I wasn't sure if there was a future in it. So talked to a bunch of folks. They're like, yeah, there's a future in data science. You should go into it. So I decided to go ahead and get a certificate just to understand what data science was about. What's nice about it is it gave me the breadth, and I was like, yeah, I really like this data science. So I actually got the opportunity to switch to become a data scientist at Microsoft. The other thing the certificate program told me was that I love the breadth, but there was a lot of depth that I did not have. I didn't have a background in statistics at the time. I didn't know what a standard deviation was. And so I joked that, I didn't want to be a fraud. So I decided to go back to school. So I got my master's in data science from the University of Washington. And after that, I switched to Zillow, and I led the consumer engagement analytics team at Zillow. After a while out from Zillow, I switched to Convoy. I had followed a manager that I respected, and he had gone to a startup. called Convoy. I was like, I've never worked in a startup. I've worked for a long time at a big company, Microsoft. So I wanted to check it out and see what it's about. So I went to Convoy, had a great time there, led the data science team supporting the marketing organization as well as the revenue and sales organization. And then from Convoy, I wanted to go back into product data science. So I got the opportunity to go to Shopify. Spent about a year and a half at Shopify, and got recruited to come join Meta with an opportunity that I couldn't say no, and so I joined Meta. So I've been at Meta for the past few months, actually less than 3 months, and so far it's a blast. I'm really glad and privileged for the opportunity. But just like the rest of my career, it's hard to say what happens next. I always keep an open mind. So why did I share all this? Some of the key takeaways as I look back on my career is the first and most important is that careers don't always take a straight or predetermined path. Sometimes you just have to focus and do the best you can at the moment, but it doesn't mean you have to be committed for that for the rest of your life. There are lots of changes that will happen. The industry will change. New opportunities will come out. So be open to it. The other key piece that I took away is that not everything in my career was my decision or my making. There are very many pivotal moments that actually was someone else's idea. Coming to the US was my parents' idea and my aunt's idea. It wasn't something I would have thought of for myself. Getting the internship, applying to the internship was my aunt's idea. In all honesty, I wouldn't have applied to the internship. I just wanted to enjoy my summer, but she kept pushing and like, have you applied? Have you applied? And at some point, I'm like, I'm tired of saying no and sort of dealing with the questions. So I'm like, now I'll just apply and just get it over with. But it's sort of been a very pivotal moment for me. So you may have folks in your life that care a lot about you, and once in a while they may push you, may encourage you to try something different. By all means, be open to it. It doesn't mean you have to do everything everybody tells you, but sometimes people intend, either directly or indirectly, sort of see something that you don't see or can actually be a good influence in your future. Along the lines, I'll say always plan for the future and be open to change, right? You never know what's going to happen. No knowledge or experience is wasted. That's something I learned from my mom. And it's interesting. I'm sort of compressing my stories here, but part of the reason I was able to become a data engineer and was actually able to get ahead was I already had an experience with SQL. And I had an experience with SQL when it wasn't cool. During my internships, I had worked with Microsoft Access, which is probably nobody uses it today. But at that point, I had to do a lot of work in SQL. It didn't seem like the cool thing to work with or the cool stuff to program in when everybody else was programming in more attractive languages. But that knowledge, even though I didn't use it for many years, actually helped me leapfrog in my career. So definitely be open, like whatever you learn, whether it's in school or whatever experiences you get, you never know when it will come in handy. Everyone has imposter syndrome. Question it. When I first applied to Microsoft, I sort of drew a blank for the first 5 minutes of my interview, and I thought, this is it. It's over. I've screwed it up, and all of that stuff. And at many points throughout my career, I've sort of had this question like, do I belong, and all of that stuff. So if you find yourself questioning, am I good at, am I going to be good enough, or the answer is yes, 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 yes. Figure out what you need to do and kind of get into it. Invest in yourself and continuous improvement, whether it means the classes you take, getting the different degree certificate programs, or even watching educational stuff on YouTube, reading stuff online, whatever it is that sort of like helps make you a better you, definitely invest in that. Jump at the right opportunity, even if you don't think you're ready. I was lucky to get this advice early in my career where someone said, you know what, if you ever get asked, can you do X? The answer is always yes, and then work as hard as possible to learn how to do X, even if you don't know how to do X. And then last and most importantly, I think many times when people share their career stories, I will see what gets posted on LinkedIn or Facebook or social media. It's usually the bright side, but there's always a more challenging side to everybody's journey. And it's almost inevitable that most people in their career or in their lifetime will fail. And failure could take many forms. It could be failing a class. It could be not getting the job you want. It could be whatever form it takes. But the most important thing is to take the time for yourself to grieve, try to learn from the experience, and then just pick yourself back up. So diving into exploring data science, At first, I'll start with just a quick overview of what is data science. And it's difficult to actually get a good definition of what data science is because I don't think data science is well defined, and I don't think it's going to be well defined for a few years to come. But this is a definition that I picked from Wikipedia, and I actually liked it a lot. I highlighted a lot of words in here that I think is sort of key and important when we think about data science. The first is that it's interdisciplinary, right? There isn't just like one field or one thing that makes data science what it is. Even when I was taking my master's program, it was a interdisciplinary program. You have concepts from biostats, from statistics, from math, from engineering, like just a bunch of different skill sets. The good news is that everybody brings something to the table. And the good news is that nobody knows everything that has to do with data science. And there are a bunch of methods and processes and algorithms that are becoming a bit more standard and some that are less standard, but it's very much trying to do things in a more scientific, repeatable way. And the key is sort of extracting knowledge and insights. And the idea is it's not just about what we know, but what do we encourage people to do with it? Like, how can we use this to either answer a question? How can we use this to improve a business? How can we use this to improve an experience? And then the key piece I sort of highlighted here is that, the data could be noisy, it could be structured or unstructured, it could be dirty, right? Many times we have this idea that there's this perfect data and that we can just go in and just start using it. And in many cases, a lot of the data science work is really in trying to make sense out of very unstructured, missing, or not ideal data. And there's the other piece in the diagram that I like, is that there is also an aspect to data science, depending on how you specialize, that goes into having business expertise or customer experience. Like beyond the technical, there is just this aspect of being able to have a good foundation for the business, a good foundation for the users, for the customers, and that does add a lot to the technical skills. Okay. So I'll pull behind the curtain and say, okay, what are some of the data science projects? I'm not going to go into details for all of these. What I'm trying to do here is move away from sort of the cooler data science projects that we hear about, the recommender engines and all of that stuff. Those are all part of data science. But sometimes most of the important work that happens in data science doesn't initially look as crazy or as attractive as many people may think, or they may happen behind the scenes, but they're just as impactful. My favorite and one of the most powerful tools that I think is very underrated is this idea of exploratory data analysis. It's really coming into a space and just questioning, what do we know, right? What does the data tell us? What's really happening? And I found this to be very, very powerful. During my time at Zillow, we're able to do a basic basic EDA, and we're able to discover that, we've been focusing our efforts on an area where we don't need to focus our efforts because things are going great. And the area that needs our help, we're not focusing in there. And it's really just a simple exploratory analysis that helps. It feels sometimes like counting and grouping and all of that stuff, but it is really powerful. Another interesting one is funnel analysis. In many cases, when we work on data science projects, we have an ultimate goal and we have a population of people that could be targets or candidates to achieve that goal. And being able to simplify or format any data science problem or team or objective or chatter into a funnel has become, I think, one of the most powerful tools that I have experienced. And it sort of like allows you to see how many people get into the process at each stage of the funnel, how many people drop off, where's the biggest drop off, so you can actually go in and update stuff and optimize for that. Maybe one or two more I'll touch on here. A/B testing is just like the workhorse of data science. Just about every company has a huge investment in A/B testing or experimentation. Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, all the big companies have to do it. And it's just a powerful way to really understand the causal relationship between the changes that we're trying to make and the effects that we're hoping to see, and being able to know, are we going in the right direction? Does it really move the metrics in the way we want? And so that's really a super powerful tool in the toolkit. I wouldn't go into as much detail into others, but there's stuff like customer segmentation using cluster analysis, the predictive analytics, which is the one most people talk about, sort of the machine learning cool stuff. There is LTV, which is lifetime value, understanding how much value we'll get from a user or customer over their lifetime. The customer acquisition cost. So these are mostly very relevant in the marketing data science. Forecasting, time series, trying to predict the future trends, really, really difficult, especially when you have things that are unexpected, like the pandemic that we just had. Data visualization is pretty much it's bread and butter for the typical data scientist. And storytelling, we have to be able to tell a lot of stories from the data and sort of be able to have a conversation with people. And everything we do sort of either comes up with an insight or recommendation to help people. And there's a lot more specialized fields like NLP, image processing, deep learning, and all that stuff. I put a list here to at least try the keywords or the buzzwords, and then you can search and sort of like read more about them. Going into the data science job families, this is something I think has been a huge source of confusion because there's no real definition. Every company you go to has a different definition for what data scientist is, and even within the same company, there are different definitions. But essentially, in my view, my experience, you can sort of break them up into three main functions or three main job families: the data engineer, the data analytics, and sort of the applied or research scientist. The data engineer is really the folks who are focused on the big data. They are focused on building and moving data at scale and creating the tables and the tools that other people can use to get the insights they want. So they pretty much do a lot of the heavy lifting, heavy massaging, the cleaning of the data, and all the best practices that go with that to make data available for others to consume. Going to the other extreme end, you have the applied or research scientists. They typically work on very specialized focus, trying to work on optimizations. Many times this is where you find the machine learning projects. A lot of them usually have PhDs depending on the company that you're looking at. They're sometimes called ML engineers, also data scientists, statisticians, they fall into that. And then in the middle, you have the data analytics, sort of the generalist, and they sort of bring this a little bit of skills from both sides, but they also bring in sort of the business perspective. They are aligned with a lot of the cross functional stakeholders. They're sometimes called data analysts, business analysts, decision scientists, data scientists. But this sort of like the rough three buckets. Once again, this isn't like a black and white or cut straight, but you can it sort of varies from company to company. I'll go over this real quickly because I'm noticing I'm running out of time. But essentially, the way you can have the three roles overlap with some of the data science projects. This is actually the actual pyramid is something I got off the internet, but I overlaid the different roles, and you can see the overlaps that sort of fit into these various roles. This is sort of looking at the three different roles once again and sort of thinking about the different data science skills that you need to get in and which ones are critical at each stage and which are sort of optional and more a basic understanding would be sufficient. Hopefully this sort of helps to paint a picture into what the day-to-day life in each of these three roles would be. And I think this is probably my last slide. With everything I've said, I know it's really high level, but wanted to say if you're interested in a career in data science, what are some of those things that you can explore? So even if you're not interested in a career, what are those things you explore to know if data science is right for you? This is not an exhaustive list, but it's sort of what I think are maybe the minimum to create a basic foundation. The first is statistics. I think more and more as the data science field or discipline evolves, having the basic foundation of statistics just becomes more and more critical and sort of creates a lot of understanding for why things happen. Many times we're able to figure out, oh, we can do this, we can use this algorithm, we can do X, Y, and Z, but understanding why it works, what's really, how to interpret the results, where the levers are, having a basic foundation of statistics is great. I didn't have one, but I know most of you might still be in high school or even earlier. If you have those statistics class, pay attention to them, they'll come out to be useful. I call out two technical skills here, SQL and Python. I think those are the two workhorses for to have a successful career in data science. I know R is also a language, but I'm biased towards Python because I think it's more robust and maybe has a lot more long-term view. And then the last piece I would call out is don't ignore the soft skills. There are so many important, valuable soft skills that you need to have a successful data science career. And to be honest, in any career that you want to get to, things like communication, things like just being someone that's nice to work with. Nobody wants to work with a smart jerk. So just having those basic skills, critical thinking, problem solving, all of that stuff fits in. And so with that, I only have a few seconds left for questions. But if you have any questions, feel free to come online or type it in the chat. Okay. I don't see any questions, and I know my time's up. But thanks so much for being part of this presentation, and then feel free to reach out if you have questions. Okay. So I see a question here. I'm talking about how I got my pivotal internship. To be honest, it wasn't really my doing. I think my aunt at the time heard about the opportunity. It was actually through a program called Inroads. And so she got me to apply. And Inroads is a program that actually tries to match up students from underrepresented groups with corporations to sort of help create the not just the internship experience, but also build a lot of the skills that they need. And so for me, it was really all I had to do in that case was to apply, and then the program was really a very well structured program. Now that being said, there are many opportunities. I think just about every company has an internship opportunity, and what's nice about it is it actually dumps you into the real world setting with a very low level commitment. So at the end of the internship, even if you get an offer, you have no commitment to come back to the same company. You can try different companies or different roles if it's not important for you, if it is not a good match for you. And I know with the current macroeconomic conditions happening, internships may not be have the same flavor as they used to have. But I would say if you have the opportunity, if you're interested in exploring, do a search, reach out on LinkedIn, and just look at companies that have an internship opportunities. So that's sort of like trying to get in there. And then once you get in there, just be a sponge, absorb as much as you can, learn as much as you can, and then try to figure out, if this is something you love, or just take what you can from it. Hopefully, I was able to answer the question, that is the intent of the question. Yeah, you're very welcome, Lisa. Cool. Um, yeah, so I think that's it from my end. I don't see any more questions, and I think my time's up. So I'll say, yeah, thanks for being part of this, and hopefully you found this useful. And if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or wherever. Thanks, everyone.